everyone. This is going to be a very special episode of the Acceptance of Life podcast. We call this the intention episode, and we're going to talk about the effects of meditation on the world. Can meditation actually affect change in the world around us? And we have some good news because the answer is a resounding yes. Meditation does have a positive effect, not only in our own personal life, but also on the world around us, on humanity at large, on events that happen in the world. And there is scientific research to back it up, done by the Maharishi University in the US, and also experiments on consciousness done by spiritual author and researcher Lynn McTaggart. We're going to talk about those experiments and that research. It's really, really interesting, and it can probably motivate you to take your spiritual practice seriously, because you're not only doing it for yourself, you're also really helping the world. We're also going to branch out into other topics. We talk about spiritual experiences, like how do you actually get a spiritual experience? What should you do? And maybe more importantly, what should you not do, to prevent them from happening? Vajin shares a beautiful story about a spiritual experience that he has when he was 16 years old. And we also throw in a few stories from the Zen tradition, which we always love, because these stories very often reveal in a very practical manner some of the teachings that we want to discuss, the spiritual teaching, and make them really come alive. Finally, we want to invite you, because a few months from now in the future, September 21st, is the UN International Day of Peace. And we want to do a collective meditation, 7 minutes for world peace. And so this will really have a very powerful and positive effect on the consciousness of the globe. So please join us. Put it in your agenda already, 21st of September, 7 minutes for world peace. Thanks, and enjoy this episode. Kind of wanted to start with the question, what is the world? Because for many people, this is like a given, right? When we speak about the world, it's like we always imagine, at least I do, like the earth, the globe, with all the countries and continents. And, that is what we call the world. But I think if we really think about it, there's much more to it than what the world means to us, what the world is. And if I ask you the question, Vajin, what in your opinion is the world? What do you consider the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very profound question. And I like to remember always that big things are made of many, many small things. So if you want to understand something that's very large, one way to do that, because often very large things are really hard to grapple with, they're too complicated, and it seems like there's too much information and noise. And so when I think of the world, I think the world is a manifestation of consciousness. So it's the present manifestation of the cumulative or the combined consciousness of all existence. So like if we're talking about our world that we're living in here, our world is made up by the consciousness, or it's a manifestation of the consciousness that's existing on this planet at this particular moment. So That's one way, but there's many different ways I could talk about it as well.
Yeah, I find it interesting. Like for me, the world, when we talk about it in the sense of the influence that you have in the world or your role in the world, I'd like to think of it as the field of manifestation, which is also something that Sri Chinmoy, our guru, talked about when he talked about the world. It's like the field of manifestation, meaning it's the place where you can express your soul's qualities, like the role in your life's mission. And it's much more to me than just a locality. So the world, I think, is more made up of all the relations that you have with others. And so we know that the world is comprised of all these different places and continents and countries. But like for me, when I think of a country like Oman or a country like Peru, I don't really have a connection to that place. It's like I know that it exists, but it's not really real for me. I don't know people there. And so I have a very low resolution image of those places. But what I do know is the world around me, the people that my friends and family, my colleagues, the place I go to for work every day. And so I think a good way to think about the world is your own immediate surroundings. That's in a sense also the world. It's the place where you go and interact every day, where you give your love to people, where you show your service, where you do your duties, and where you have interactions with people. So For me, the world is your immediate surroundings. And that's the place where you have a more high resolution image, right? That's the place where you know the people, you've interacted with them for some time, and you can really do things there. You can, you can manifest your qualities there, and you can learn, and you can inspire others and be inspired by others. So in a sense, that's a really useful image to think of the world, I think, is the place where you go and interact and be with other people.
Yeah, and we talk about being able to expand your world. Like if your world gets too small, if you're not getting out and interacting with enough people or without stretching yourself beyond just your comfort zone, your world starts to shrink. And you often see that with people who become very lonely or elderly people who start to lose connections and their world starts to shrink down. So yeah, I like that definition as well, because it reminds us that that is the place that we actually know for certain. Whereas everything outside of that, like all of your ideas about Oman, for example, have come from seeing some pictures or someone saying something or hearing something. And so it's not clear if that information you have is actually true and it's actually representative of that real place, because you know that there is a real place there. But if you haven't been there and interacted with it, you're always going to be woefully ill-informed, and your image of it's going to be really inaccurate. And so
Yeah.
then it's really dangerous if you start basing your beliefs about the world on pictures that you've seen or stories that you've heard from someone else without having any because the world is so complex and there's so much information just in being in a place. Like this is really interesting. I'll share this now. So a family friend of my mother's. So my mother and her were good friends when I was a child growing up, and she lived in Christchurch with us, and she did, I don't remember exactly what she did for her career, but her life wasn't extraordinary in any particular way. She didn't really travel much. She was basically here, there in New Zealand, living her life. And then when she was it must have been in her 50s, she started going blind. And then she ended up going completely blind. So now she's completely blind and she has a seeing eye dog. Since then, she has traveled all over the world. So she just returned from a 7-week safari in Africa and she's completely blind. But when she goes to these places, obviously she's feeling something radically different in the atmosphere than she feels when she's back home in New Zealand. So even though she can't see the animals, she knows that there's something there and she can feel it, even though she can't see what is happening there. So she was putting a lot of pictures up on Facebook, my mum was saying, of all the animals. The photos were being taken by the safari guide. So she didn't see the animals, but they're like, okay, there's a rhino here, or there's a lion, or there's an elephant. And what she's able to do in that moment is connect with the energy and the feeling in that space, the field of information. So even someone who is blind can get so much joy and satisfaction from traveling to different places, because when you go there, there's a field of information and it's much deeper than just seeing the sights in the place and experiencing them in that way. So I find that story so remarkable. And so, yeah, since she went blind, she's traveled all over the world. Beforehand, she did not leave Christchurch.
Wow, that's an incredible story. Yeah. Well, you are also an example of somebody who expands their world. You're doing a lot of traveling. And so you're kind of like building a more high resolution map of the world than when you just hear about different places or see pictures of it, anywhere in the news or on Instagram. Actually going there, right, really, really improves your vision of the world as such.
Yeah, and what I find, it's really great because in some way it gives you the opportunity to compare the story that you heard about a place to the actual reality of what it is like to be there. And so it starts to give you an ability to understand in which ways the stories that you're being told are perhaps inaccurate or how they're getting things wrong. Because you can go to the place and you can say, okay, it's not how I imagined it was going to be from what I was told. But perhaps if you go to many places, you can start to get an understanding of the commonality of how things are better or different. And the thing for me is, I've nearly everywhere I've been, I've found that it's much better, and like life is going much better in all of these places than I would have been led to believe if I just listened to the stories that our culture or the media is providing me. And so that for me is really that gives me a lot of hope for the world, because the great thing is when you go out there into the world, even if you're in some place where there's been conflict, or in the recent past, or there's been famine or disaster or different things, you still go there and you find families and people trying to do the best they can with the situation they find themselves in. And especially one of the wonderful things I find when I travel in the world is the amount of people that are willing to give so much and sacrifice so much to make their children's lives better. So especially in developing parts of the world, I see so many people really sacrificing so much to make their children's lives so much better, giving them a better education and giving them better opportunities. And I think that's one of the great gifts that as humanity that we can do, is try and improve the opportunities for those who come after us, like try and pave the way, try and create a better opportunity or a better pathway for those next generations. And so for me, I'm always really inspired by seeing that happening.
Yeah, beautiful. So I wanted to talk about the role meditation has in the world, because you and me, we are both meditators. We've both been meditating for over 25 years. We follow a spiritual path. Our teacher, Sri Chinmoy, has written a lot about meditation and also about its effect on the world. And I also feel very strongly that meditation is two-sided. You don't only, on the one hand, you do it for your own personal development. You become more peaceful. You become more balanced. You get to know yourself much better. You get a connection with the divine through your meditation. It has all these wonderful effects. Apart from that, it also has an effect on the world. And it's interesting that this also has been studied. And I just wanted to cite one example, which I find so captivating, because it's such an amazing experiment that was done. And this experiment took place in 1993, and it was conducted by the Maharishi University in the United States. This is a university that was founded by the people from the Transcendental Meditation Group. And they did an experiment in Washington, D.C., the capital of the US, which was then also the crime capital of the US. I don't know if that's still the case, but definitely in 1993, they had a lot of violent crime. And so their hypothesis was that if we bring in a few thousand meditators, their goal was to bring in 4,000 meditators, which they achieved during the experiment. And if we have them meditate every day for a number of hours, I believe it was 2 sessions of 2 hours, then this will have a positive effect on the crime rate of the city. It will go down. And they hypothesized that the crime rate would go down by something like 18%. I think
It's amazing that they could hypothesize what number they even thought it was.
Well, I think it was based on some smaller experiments that they had done in the 80s as well. So yeah, they weren't going in blank. They had some experience. But this was definitely the biggest experiment. And they worked together with the chief of police of Washington, D.C., because they had to get the crime statistics. And so when they presented their experiment and their hypothesis to him, he just laughed at them. He's like, there's no way that a group of people meditating and sitting still are going to decrease the crime rate by 20%. He said the only thing that will take down the crime rate by 20% is 20 inches of snow. That was his kind of like cynical comment at the beginning of the experiment.
Yeah.
The experiment was done in the summer months, so no chance of snow there. It was done in June and July. It took 2 months. And they started out with, I believe, a group of like 400 or 500 people in the first couple of days. And then steadily, more and more people flew in. They had a big international movement, and all these people came in. And at the peak of the experiment, they did have 4,000 people.
Yeah.
And they meditated, they did the experiment, and then they looked at the crime rates. And lo and behold, the crime rate during the peak moment of their experiment, when they had 4,000 people meditate every day for 2 times 2 hours, the crime rate dropped by 23%. So that was pretty amazing. I see, maybe I can post up the graph. You can really see this kind of dip. And then when they stopped the experiment, very gradually, the line went back to the baseline level, the normal level. And so with violent crime, they were talking about homicide, rape, assault, and robbery. So all these kind of violent crimes went down. And they, of course, they controlled for police staffing and weather and all these things. They had no influence on the experiment. And you know that every scientific experiment has this statistic probability that it is based on chance, right? It's the P level. And so the lower the P level, the less that it's likely to chance. And this had one of the lowest P levels I've ever come across. It's like 2 in 1 billion,
Wow.
which is a really low P level. So there's no,
That is not a high number there.
it's probably not a coincidence that this happens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the people that are listening to this podcast probably know the effects of meditation, and they're not skeptical. But still, it's really encouraging to see that you can actually prove that meditation, group meditation,
Yeah.
has a measurable effect on the world. And you look at the crime rates, and of course, this speaks to something bigger, that, it's not only that crime goes down, but of course, I think what happens is when you meditate, you send out a vibration.
Mhm.
You send out a really positive vibration. And vibration is something really concrete. It is actually energy that goes out and that affects change in the world. And so when all these people meditate together, this huge, powerful vibration goes out, and it just influences the consciousness of its surroundings. And that ties into what you said about the world being a field of consciousness. We are all connected through this field of consciousness. And so if we meditate, what we do is we positively influence this field of consciousness with our meditation. And of course, what I didn't really like about the experiment is that they termed this the Maharishi effect, which I thought
Mm.
was a little bit, I would call it the meditation effect,
Yeah.
It's like, I think any group meditating together will achieve the same results. It doesn't necessarily have to be the transcendental meditation or the Sri Chinmoy meditation or the Ramana Maharshi meditation. But in general, if you dive deep within and you bring to the fore this source of silence and peace that resides deep inside all of us, then this creates this wonderful vibratory positive effect.
Yeah. So because I would see that it comes about, that sort of effect, by the change in the field of consciousness in that place. Because obviously, if you looked as you moved further and further away in a geographical sense from where they were centered, probably the effects would become less and less. So it'd be really interesting to know as well, like, was it a 100-mile radius, or is it a
Yeah,
200-mile radius? Like, how far
very true.
did it spread, in a physical
Well,
sense?
I think maybe that a city has its own consciousness. A city has a soul. And I think maybe that is that, that it is, if you go out in a city and you do a consciousness experiment for that city, it's kind of like contained within the city bounds or the city limits, I would think. That it maybe
Yeah.
affects that particular, because the people in the city also consider that area as being Washington, D.C., or as being Amsterdam, or as being Christchurch. So I think everybody who identifies with that particular consciousness is benefited by it.
Yeah, and then the great question for me is it the fact that these people who are doing the practice, that they're putting themselves in a proper alignment with the foundational consciousness of the universe? So let's say that there is a divine consciousness permeating reality, and these 4,000 people, when they were meditating, they were putting themselves back into alignment, or creating an alignment between themselves and that divine consciousness that permeates reality. And so then that was causing the transformation, or whether they were putting some particular intention that they were hoping to have on the surrounding, like, were they having an intention of peace, or trying to create a spirit of oneness and harmony? And it would be interesting to know which would be more powerful. Would it be the people
Yes,
themselves trying to make a positive change to the consciousness in the environment, or would it be them putting themselves properly in alignment with the fundamental divine consciousness? And would that be more powerful?
that's a great segue to the next thing I wanted to mention, because the difference between an intention, or, like you say, if they allowed the divine consciousness to come to the fore. I don't know in this particular sense, the experiment, what their meditation was like. It
Yeah.
didn't really specify in the research. I think it was more along the first option. It was. I don't think they did a positive intention.
Yeah.
But there is a lady who has studied a lot about intentionality. Her name is Lynn McTaggart. She's actually an American-born journalist, and she wrote some very influential books. Her famous books called The Field. Another famous one is called The Intention Experiment. And I had the good fortune to interview her when I was working as a freelance journalist. It's now about 15 years ago. She came to Amsterdam, and I interviewed her about her book that just came out, The Intention Experiment. And he or she had done a lot of experiments with conscious intentions. So here she had people come together. I mean, they could be in separate rooms, but through the internet they connected, and they sent out a conscious intention to influence something. And it could be all kinds of things that you could measure. So they did an intention experiment on growing seeds. They had like 4 different plant seeds in 4 different laboratories. 3 were control groups, and then they had one seed. They had a photographic image of that seed, and they were putting a conscious intention to let that seed grow, grow, grow. And so what happened is that seed grew much faster than the 3 other seeds that did not receive the same intentionality. And they did also an intention experiment on purifying water. So they were able to purify the water, meaning that the molecular structure of the water was better aligned to that of healthy water. They also measured that with a scientist measuring it. And so she did about 41 of these intention experiments, of which 37 had measurable effect, proved to be proven.
That's really, really excellent out of 41 experiments.
It's a really good result. And she did 11 peace intention experiments where she was concentrating on peace. And for me, the most amazing one, and the one that I also asked her about in the interview, was the one she did on Sri Lanka in 2008. She did a peace intention experiment where they decided to the call went out to anyone in her range that knew about her or followed her to do this intention experiment. And she had 15,000 people sign up for this. And they wanted to try and see if through their intention, they could bring peace to a war-stricken area anywhere in the world. But they chose an area that was not widely covered in the media. So there was no noise of all other people doing prayers for that region or being really in the forefront of people's attention. And they decided to focus on Sri Lanka. At the time, Sri Lanka had been in a very long, drawn-out civil war. Mm-hmm. You had the Tamil Tigers, this kind of terrorist rebellious group that was occupying the north of the country, and then the government who was fighting them. And it had gone on for 25 years. And so, but it was not covered in the media. There was no real media attention to it. And so she decided to send out a positive intention for peace to this kind of northern region of Sri Lanka, where there was so much turmoil and civil war. And 15,000 people did this for a full week. I don't know the specifics, how long they did this, probably a few minutes every day. Like I think it was a 10-minute period every day where they were consciously sending out a peace intention. And amazingly, what happened was that during the experiment, the violence actually flared up. So it became high, the highest point it had been in years. And then it slowly and slowly went down until the war actually was over. The war was declared over in May of 2009. They did the experiment in September of 2008. But mind you, this war had been going on for 25 years. And so during their intention experiment, the violence flared up and then it went down and down and down. So what happened was when they sent these intentions, the army had some decisive battles. So that's where the violence flared up. The government army invaded and they had some decisive battles. They won a lot of terrain. They were able to kind of like secure some important positions. And then finally they could do peace negotiations with these Tamil Tigers. And then the war was declared over in May of 2009. So, you can say, oh yeah, one experiment doesn't prove anything, which is true. But she did 11 of these experiments and they all had an effect. One other one I read about was they focused on a very violent area in the States, in St. Louis, Missouri, which was apparently one of the most violent cities. And then they chose the most violent neighborhood. They did an intention experiment specifically targeted to that neighborhood in St. Louis. And they measured the statistics of the violent crimes, and they went down by 43% during this or just after the week of intentions. So very interesting stuff. So you can, with your intentions, you can influence the world, especially when you gather a group of like-minded people. And, Lynn McTaggart has also researched, she's talked about the group size, and she says the size actually doesn't matter that much. She now recently published a book called The Power of 8. So she's saying with as little as 8 people, you can affect these kind of changes in your immediate environment. And so these are also things like helping people who are suffering from health issues or who have financial problems, or if you have 8 people that are putting out a positive intention for you, she's also found that that really brings about a huge effect, and people immediately feel better or their situation improves. So it's interesting to know that small groups can make big changes in the world.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that at a particular place and a particular time, there is a consciousness that is prevalent and is located there. And a good example for us, which we've experienced, is New York City, because obviously we've been there many times back and forth, visiting with our meditation center being based there. But at different times, especially during the 1980s and into the 1990s, New York was an incredibly dangerous place. And there was that philosophy, I think it was called the broken windows approach, where they, like, a good example was the New York subway system was incredibly dangerous and there was a lot of crime. But one of the reasons it seemed for that was there was like graffiti and rubbish everywhere. And so they made the policy that no subway car or carriage would go out with any graffiti on it. So as soon as it was graffiti, it was pulled off circulation, and everything would constantly be being painted over and cleaned. And somehow that intentionality of tidying up and cleaning up the place, it had a corresponding effect on the crime rate. So it's like the people putting care and concern into their environment somehow as well started to change and shift the consciousness, because you could imagine that someone is walking down a street and there's someone who has a predilection to perhaps breaking rules and doing bad things, and the philosophy was that if there was already a broken window on that street, they would think, oh, no one really cares. Like, no one really cares about this place. So if I do something wrong and criminal, like, it won't really no one will really bat an eyelid. And so that seemed to be the case. And we have areas where there was a lack of care and concern, then the crime rates would be higher. And as soon as they started trying to remedy those things and bring those down, those same people would be in those same environments, but perhaps they wouldn't feel that same motivation to go, if you, because that's the thing, if you're in a beautiful place or a place where everything is orderly and put together nicely, it seems the wrong thing to do to, drop litter or, tag your name on the wall or break something. Yeah. So yeah, it's really interesting that you can see that within one city over periods of time, because I think New York is now one of the safest big cities in America. So suddenly you went from one of the most dangerous to the safest through putting more care and concern into the system.
Yeah. Well, and also, our group has meditated there for many, many decades. Sri Chinmoy was there. It was where he conducted his meditations every week, and there were sometimes hundreds of people meditating there. So I do think that also has had an effect.
Yeah.
And perhaps they are compounding effects to the same outcome, that you make the world more peaceful that way. But it's really encouraging to know in this time where we still have conflicts all over the world, to know that you can make a difference, not by necessarily outer actions. Like, I don't think peace is going to come about through politics or through economics, sanctions or whatever, or decisions, but it's going to come about by invoking peace, like really through the inner peace. We have to invoke peace into our own lives. And then from one person to the next, the peace can spread. And there was the famous Secretary General U Thant in the 70s, Secretary General of the United Nations. He famously said, there is no peace in the world today because there's no peace in the minds of men. I think that says it all, right? It's like, it's so simple. We have to invoke peace into our own lives, and only then can we offer something to the world. It's like when you only go the outer way, when you only try to encourage change by policy making, you're only really running with one leg. If the peace is not there, foundational peace is not there, brought about by individuals, by their own inner peace, I don't think it has a lasting effect.
Yeah, and it reminds me as well about Sri Chinmoy's philosophy for the new millennium, and his vision was to expedite world peace and world oneness, we need to first of all really force ourselves to see the good that we've done, the good things that we're going to do, and the good things that others have done. And he said that the philosophy of that new millennium will be to see the light in ourselves and to see the light in others.
Only the good. It's
Yeah.
only
And that for
focusing
me
on the
is really
good.
profound, because there's something about, if our relationship with ourselves is in the proper order, if we can see the divine and the sacred within ourselves, if we can see all of the good things within ourselves and all the good things that we've done and all the good things that we're hoping to do, we're already in a place where that's how we're looking at the world. Like if we're looking at ourselves and interacting with ourselves, and coming from that place of seeing the good, then immediately when we look out into the world, we will start to see the good in all of the others around us. And it's really hard if you're constantly critical about yourself internally, then to turn around and look at the world and see the good in others. You're already in a habit and you're already in a practice of seeing everything that is wrong with yourself. And then you'll do the same thing with the world around you and with the individuals around you. But as soon as you make that your habit to try and see always the good, it suddenly becomes so much easier. You start to see people walking down the street, you start to interact with people. And if that is the thing you're looking for, you will always find it. It's what you're looking for and what you're valuing. You will always see those things. Even your brain itself will become better at picking up on those things. And so if you're always paying attention to the negative things, you will look around and you'll always be able to find something to criticize, and something that other people are doing that you can criticize. Whereas if you're looking at the world from the point of view of the good, you suddenly start saying, wow, look at what this person's doing. They're serving this community, or they're offering this, or they're doing this thing. And even if they're doing 9 things wrong in your eyes, you could, but if you can see one good thing that they're doing, it totally changes the way that you see them, you relate with them, you interact with them. So it seems it's a much better strategy to see the good in the world, because it inspires you. It makes your relationships with other people and with the world much more harmonious and much more enjoyable. And it seems if you want more of that in the world, that's the thing that you need to be paying attention to. That's the thing you need to be celebrating. And that's the thing you need to be cultivating and putting energy towards.
So how should we deal with people who say, well, what if people take advantage of us? What if somebody has ill will or is not trustworthy? You're trying to see the good in them, and they just walk all over you, or they just take advantage of you.
Yeah, and well, that for me is the time for some heroism and some courage, and that's going out into the world and taking that risk, that someone might let us down, or they might take advantage of us at some point. But if you don't take that risk of trusting someone and putting your faith in the best inside them, you're never going to give them a chance. Because if you're already looking at them and seeing them as a criminal and a rogue, and that's something that I've experienced really clearly in my own life. So I've spent a lot of time traveling in Africa or in Asia, and in these places you always hear, oh, there's so many crooks and there's so many rogues out there, so you've got to be so careful. But I always choose to put my faith in people, and in some way taking that decision, taking that risk of trusting this person. People will rise to the standard, or rise to the idea that you the opportunities that you put in front of them. So if you put your faith in someone, and they know, they can see that you're trusting them, it actually puts them in a situation where they actually want to live up to that standard. If you in your mind already thinking you're interacting with someone like a driver, or someone you're trying to get a service from, and you're already thinking that they're a rogue and they're trying to trick you and they're trying to rip you off and give you a bad deal, they're gonna act reciprocate from they're going to act from that place, because that's the picture that you're creating, that's the standard that you've put in front of them. And they'll often then act in that way, because they can see or feel on some level of consciousness, like, this person doesn't care for me, this person doesn't trust for me, so why should I have any goodwill? Why should I try and be of good service to them? Or why should I try and help them? Whereas if they can see that you're putting your faith in them and saying, hey, I don't know you, but I have a feeling that I can trust you, and so I'm gonna take that risk, and I'm gonna choose to trust you, And then they have a choice to make. They're like, okay, do I want to betray this person and try and cheat them or steal from them or trick them? Or do I actually want to come up to that standard? Because you're giving them the opportunity to rise to a higher standard. And I've always found that when I do that with interactions with people, people want to come up to that standard. Like, I think there's a small number of people that are happy to be rogues, but it's a very, very small number. I think most people are actually trying to do the best they can.
I have to think of the story you told in one of the first episodes about this call you got from India where the
Yes.
guy tried to scam you, and you
Yeah.
just responded with some spiritual thing, or you called him Brahma, or you it was some really funny interaction, right?
Yeah. So,
And he,
but yeah, because he asked me, who he said, who is this? And I said, yes, who am I? The eternal question. As Ramana Maharshi said, if you can understand the answer to this question, you will understand the universe. And because I started with positing that he was a good man and had some inherent goodness and value in him, at some point he could not keep up the charade of being a rogue and a scammer,
yeah,
and he had to let down his guard and say, hey, I'm really sorry, but I'm actually a scammer and I'm trying to scam you. And
yeah, that he owned up to that. That is amazing, just by you kind of like tapping into that divine source in him. And
yeah.
it's a really powerful lesson. I think we should. That is definitely what we should try and do more in the 21st century, and for the new millennium. It's going to last 1,000 years, so it's going to be a long time to practice that.
Yeah.
To really see the good in others and lifting them up to that standard.
Yeah, and it's great because people want to do something heroic. People want their life in some way to be some sort of heroic adventure. And if you're going out into the world suspecting and you've been completely suspicious of everyone around you, is that really in any way adventurous or heroic? That seems to me to be a way to make your life become smaller and smaller, because you miss out on opportunities, you miss out on moments of connection, and you miss out on the opportunity to expand your world. But if you go out into the world and you choose to trust people, that's actually being brave and heroic. And that's a great thing, because people often misunderstand the concept of bravery or heroism and think it requires some great outer actions. But I think there's ways of being brave and heroic on a small scale on a daily basis. And I think that is one of the great ways, because there always is the chance that there's a monster out there waiting for you that's gonna eat you up. And what a brave person does is they go out there and they choose to trust the world, and they choose to interact as though there is goodness in the world. And what that will do is it will create a completely different experience in your life, from the person who goes out into the world from a place of fear and worry and anxiety, compared to someone who's going out and saying, okay, I choose to see the good in the world, I choose to see the
Do you have
divine.
some examples from your travels where this kind of happened, where you chose to see the good, and you kind of saw some transformation, or you saw that it had an effect?
Yeah, let me just think about that. I mean, there's a lot of small examples of that where you have to put your trust in someone and you don't know if they're worthy of your trust. And like a good example I had in Dubai was I'd got in a taxi at the airport, and sorry, I got in the taxi in Abu Dhabi and we were driving to Dubai. So it's a relatively long drive. And I was talking with the taxi driver, and he was an Indian man, and we were having some lovely conversations. And then at some point, I realized I needed to get some cash out to pay him, because he only accepted cash. And so we stopped at a petrol station, and I got out of the car, and all I had with me was my credit card in my hand. And I went into the petrol station and I got the money out, and I came out of the petrol station and he was completely gone. And I looked around and I couldn't really remember anything about the man. I couldn't give you any details of exactly what car he was driving, of what his name was. I knew nothing about the man. And he had all of my luggage. He had everything with him, my passport. And so I was left just standing there. And there was this moment I had to choose between oh no, I've been betrayed here. Like, this man has just driven off with all of my stuff, and I have no idea how to contact him. I have no information to give to the police. And so there was that moment. And there was also, at that moment, there was a choice like, okay, do I choose to trust this man, or do I choose to take that position and play out that whole story that perhaps he's betrayed me and he's driven off, and like I'm stuck here in Dubai with nothing? And I just stood there, and I walked around a little bit after that, and then I saw that he'd driven from one place to a completely different place. So he'd parked the car in a completely different place, and he was sitting there smiling and waving at me. And so there was a moment where I could have created a completely different reality in my own head about, oh my God, this man is such a rogue. Look what he's done. He's totally betrayed me. The world is full of rogues. I can never trust anyone. And he easily could have driven off. Like, I knew nothing about him. I had no contact details, no way of finding him. But he had nicely parked somewhere else, and he was just gently waiting for me. So that was just like a simple little way where internally I had to make that choice in that moment, because there was a moment where it was unclear. Suddenly I was in that moment where I didn't know where he was. I didn't know what had happened. But I had chosen, like, no, he is a good man, I'm sure, and he's got to be around somewhere. So I spent the time looking for him, and happily he was there.
There you go. Wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to bring up also one other researcher in the field of intention and consciousness. This is the Japanese researcher Masaru Emoto, and he's really well known about his research into water crystals and intentions on water. And so what he did was he had a glass of water, and he had people. I think his first experiment in 2006 was that he had 2,000 people all put in a positive intention into that glass of water. So they had to think of, I think it was love and gratitude. They had to send love and gratitude into the water. He would freeze the water, and then he would study the crystals that formed, because water, when it freezes, it forms these crystals. And apparently these crystals are very different. It's not always the same shape. The shape varies enormously. And so he had water also frozen where there was an evil intention, like an intention of disgust or an intention of hatred. And then he froze that water. And the crystals that came out of the positive intentions were really beautifully formed, very aesthetically pleasing. They looked kind of like flowers and beautiful snowflakes kind of crystals. And then the crystals that formed in the water that had the evil intentions, it was very ugly. There was no synchronicity there. There was no aesthetically pleasing sight. It was all very chaotic. And he repeated those experiments with words, thoughts, and feelings. And every time the water crystals that formed were really corresponding with the intention that was put onto that. And even if people just had a thought to the water, if people spoke words to the water, and that reflected it. And I remember that Sri Chinmoy often said about water, it's a carrier of consciousness. Water is consciousness, he used to say all the time. And that's very interesting, because if we think about ourselves, we are composed of 80% water. And so we are constantly receiving intentions of other people, of ourselves. And you could say that the water inside us is absorbing those energies, and it's carrying it, and it's affecting our consciousness. And so if we always think negatively of ourselves, like it's affecting directly the consciousness inside us. And if other people are putting bad intentions on us as a person, I think just because there's so much water inside it picks up that energy, and that's why it kind of stays inside you. And this also is like a testament to the power of mantra. When you chant mantras are a very positive, they create a very positive vibrations. So these are sounds that carry a spiritual consciousness. And by repeating a mantra many times, that vibration is released. And so if you chant mantras, of course, you could say the water inside you picks up, carries that consciousness. And so we are all the time, we are very, very powerful receptacles of energy, of consciousness, of intention. So it's interesting that you can influence water that way, right? And that you can, and there's so much water in the world around us, in ourselves, that it has that effect.
Yeah, and I think water is, as we look into water more and more, we start to understand how it's so much more interesting and complex than we could ever imagine. So I think there's people now who are really specialist researchers into the world of water. So I think that's fascinating. But going to what you said, it's really interesting how there's certain forms and structures. So when we see those crystals, so for those of us who have seen those crystals, you can tell which ones are harmonious and beautiful just from seeing the shapes that the crystals make. And you can see which ones are ugly and broken and disharmonious in some way. But it's really interesting how we as human beings have that already built into us. We don't
Mm.
have someone who needs to teach us, okay, this is a beautiful, harmonious shape, this is beautiful, and this is ugly and disharmonious. It's like built into the fabric of our being that we can tell when something is beautiful, when something is ugly. And when people say that they don't believe in any higher force or anything like that, I always think that there's something to me about beauty that represents, it's like the fingerprint of the divine we see in matter. And when we see it, we know it. We don't need someone to tell us, okay, this is harmonious and beautiful. This is how things should be structured. It's not like sometimes we see something really ugly and disharmonious and asymmetrical and just without any beauty. And we get confused and think that it's beautiful. Like that doesn't happen. We don't look and go, oh,
Maybe in some forms of modern art that happens. Like sometimes I think I look at modern art and it's like the celebration of ugliness almost. It's like the
yeah,
more ugly a piece is, the more, it's celebrated.
yeah.
But it's a very small. I think many people. It's not like a huge a
It's a
field that
niche.
has a lot of.
It's a
A
niche
lot,
taste because I
it's
think
a very
most
niche.
people, you see things and you intuitively can feel, oh, that is beautiful and harmonious. Like it's like in nature does an amazing job of it as well. There's a concept in Chinese thought called, I think it's called Li, which is, there's no translation into English, but it means like the patterns of beauty in nature that are also random. So it might be the way the clouds look on any particular day at one particular point in the sky, or the pattern. Yeah, like the pattern in stone is a good one. So for the Chinese, jade is one of their most sacred stones. So like the pattern in jade, it's in some ways completely random because you've got light and dark patterns running through the jade. And they would call that Li. And so they would say, oh yeah, this is really beautiful. It's really got a lot of Li in it. But it's a randomness. And it's like, the way that sand or like in the forest, you don't look at the leaves on the ground in the forest and say, oh, that's so ugly, because they're so totally random. But there's a real beauty in the randomness of nature, and so nature has this ability to create beauty in randomness. And the funny thing is, we can't do that when we're in our normal everyday human state. We really struggle with that, because if I went into someone's bedroom and they'd left their clothes everywhere, I wouldn't look around and go, oh my God, look at this beauty in the randomness of their room. Somehow we are not connected with that divine force that's creating that beauty inside the randomness. Often in our own environments, we're creating this real ugliness through the chaos. But when we look at it and we see it, we know it. But we can't explain how we know it's beautiful. It's like you see that, like you see the leaves scattered on the forest floor in the autumn, and you think, wow, it's just so perfectly done. But if we tried to do it ourselves, we couldn't do it. We couldn't take the leaves and arrange them in such a way that it would look as beautiful. So somehow nature has this innate beauty, and when we see it, we immediately recognize it without anyone needing to teach us about it.
Yeah.
And
Maybe in the human world, what corresponds to that is quality.
yeah,
So I don't know if you've read the book Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance by Robert Pirsig.
no, I have never read it. I've held it in my hand, but I have not read
Ah,
it yet. I've read a
it,
couple of pages.
yeah. When I in my freelance journalism days, I had to write an article on it for a magazine, so I had to
Yeah.
read it really thoroughly. And I have to say, it's a beautiful book. It's really worth a read, and it's a very philosophical book. And the message there is that he says the same about quality. He says quality is something that cannot be defined. There's no definition for it, but immediately when you see it, you recognize it. And so quality is something that we as human beings produce in great works of art, but also in something simple as the motorcycle maintenance, as is the title of the book. So he says the book is about him being on a road trip with his son, and he's on a motorcycle, his son is behind him, and they're traveling through the United States. And when something goes wrong with his motorcycle, he has to kind of repair it. And he says, when I put myself in a state of complete openness and presence, and I'm there with my motorcycle, then he says the solution comes to me. I don't have to think about it. I'm opening myself to the problem. I have my tools there, and I just research. I don't have any preconceived ideas. And then he says the solution just comes when he's in that moment working with the motorcycle. And he says that is the state you have to put yourself in to produce quality. It's like being fully present, being fully open to the situation, and then great quality can arise from that point. And you recognize it, like when I'm fortunate enough to live in the country where we have a lot of paintings by Van Gogh, as you pronounce it in English. We say Van Gogh. It's always,
We'll continue with Van Gogh for now, I think.
we may have to continue for our foreign listeners with Van Gogh, which is a little bit cringe for me, but Van Gogh made these
You can just call him Vincent, I think.
Vincent. Let's call him Vincent. Vincent made wonderful paintings, and I've had the good fortune of standing in front of his paintings many times. I do love to visit the museums where there are 2 museums in the Netherlands that have a lot of his paintings. And when you stand in front of a Van Gogh, of a Vincent painting, it's like a meditation. You just feel there's so much life in there, and there's so much quality. That's why he's so he's so widely renowned for that. His paintings are so popular, and so many people are recognizing the quality in it. And I think that goes for any great work of art. They become great because people recognize that there's quality with a capital Q. And in the book, Pirsig says that any work that has quality will automatically rise to the front. It will automatically become known because of its inherent quality, and that will radiate, which I really love that philosophy. So if there's real quality, people will recognize it. It's like the beauty in nature.
That is a wonderful synopsis. Now I feel like, do I even need to read the book? Like I've heard your synopsis, and that was so good that
Giving you the
perhaps
2-minute
perhaps
version.
if I read the book, I will only be disappointed.
No, you should read it. It's really, he goes into it in such depth, and it's a wonderful book.
And so what you were talking about is so beautiful, and it really leads on to what I want to talk about now, and that's about spirituality. Because we've talked about the meditation's effect on reality and on the world around us. And I want to look a little bit deeper into what the mechanism is. Like, how does it do that? Like, how do we actually go about creating this effect in reality around us? And so when we talk about meditation is part of spirituality. So it is a practice of spirituality. And so what spirituality is, though, is spirituality is something that's so wondrous because it's so deep and profound, but yet also incredibly simple. And it's something that you know when you experience it. But trying to define it is actually very difficult. But what I want to, for people out there who have beginning on their spiritual journey, interested in their spiritual journey, just try and create a little bit of an image so people can understand that spirituality is different from all other experiences we have in the world. It is of a different type of experience. A spiritual experience is a different type of experience than any other experience we have. So normally when we go around in the world, we're reading things, we're talking to people, we are seeing things. And so there's or interaction with the world, and is coming. The information in the world is coming to us through one particular form or another. So we might be talking with someone, we might be reading a book, so we're getting information that way. We may be seeing something, we might be doing something.
Through the 5 senses, usually.
Yeah, so it's happening. The information is coming to us in that sort of way. So the experience we're having is coming through one of those particular forms. So spirituality is different in that it involves all of those things and something more all at the same time. So when we're having a spiritual experience, we may be seeing something, we may be hearing something, but at the same time, there is some knowing happening on some much deeper fundamental level. And that's why we often talk about, and you've talked about it very nicely before, that when you hear some spiritual truths, you're hearing the idea, but you're also feeling it on some deeper level. You're having an experience of the idea. And it's often that sense of already knowing that what that person's saying is true. It's that knowing, oh, like somehow this person is saying things that I know on some deeper level is true. And that's a spiritual experience we're having. We're experiencing the words and ideas, but on a much deeper fundamental level than just thinking about them, hearing them, seeing the information. And so the other thing, so spirituality is on some deeper level, it's a type of knowing. And through doing our spiritual practices, what we're trying to do is we're trying to become better at experiencing those types of experience. So when we sit down to meditate, we're doing a practice of being and communing with our own deepest consciousness, which is the same thing as the universal consciousness, which is the same thing with the divine. So we're trying to put ourselves into alignment. We're trying to experience reality and consciousness in an unfiltered manner. So we're trying to experience reality without thinking about it, without seeing it, without hearing it. Instead, it's all of those things and something more at the same time. So we're trying to practice putting ourselves in that state. So then we can have those types of experiences more often. We can have these spiritual experiences more often. And what I think is really cool is a spiritual experience is unique in some ways because you cannot command it to come. You cannot force yourself to have a spiritual experience. You cannot say, right, now I'm going to experience transcendent love. Okay, transcendent love, come to me. Come on, do it.
It's not like a hotel you book online or something.
No, it's
Or a holiday
something
you book.
where you have to continually create space for these types of experience and put yourself in the right state of consciousness. You have to align yourself properly with reality.
Yeah, I would say you can create the circumstances for that experience to occur.
Yes.
That's what you do in your practice. You're creating
Yeah.
the circumstances, but whether the experience occurs or not is not up to you.
Exactly. So yeah, you can't sit down, and that's the thing that you don't want to do as a meditator. You don't want to be sitting there pushing or pulling for a particular result because you don't actually know what experience you need to have at any particular moment.
Yeah, so that was something in the beginning of my spiritual journey, which I completely made a mistake. And I remember I was just really wanting the experience again. And I think many people have that problem, that when you have your first glimpse of a spiritual experience, it's so beautiful and so meaningful and so wonderful that you immediately want to get it back. And you're sitting down your next time when you're meditation and you're kind of expecting that same experience and it does not come. And so my mistake in the beginning was I would sit for hours literally in meditation and nothing would happen. And instead, I was just drifting away from the everyday world, which happens when you meditate too long. It's not healthy. So you need a healthy balance in your practice. Don't meditate too short, but definitely also not make it too long. And that was my mistake in my beginning formative months of the spiritual life. Is I would just want these experiences so badly. I would sit for hours and nothing would happen. And so yeah, that's an interesting thing. And you see this, right? Many times people just they want that experience back. They're looking for it. And sometimes it's good because a spiritual experience puts you on the journey. And then it may take many, many years for you to kind of arrive. And I think you realize it's not about the experience as such. It's about the growing of your consciousness. It's about the expansion of your personality into a more divine personality, which is the real value of living spirituality. But I'm getting a little bit off track here. So
Yeah, and our master always said expectation leads to frustration.
100%.
So that's the thing. You don't want to create that reality for yourself where you have an expectation from what you want to achieve inside your meditation.
Peace begins when expectation ends, Sri Chinmoy used to say. And I love that aphorism.
Yeah, so I haven't told this story before, but my second true spiritual experience I had was perhaps when I was 16 years old. So I'd already had one deeply transformative spiritual experience, and that had changed me and captured my imagination in such a way that that was all I was interested in. So like the trappings of success and my day-to-day life in school and all of those things became far less important than trying to recapture that experience. And so I remember it must have been 1.5 years after my first real spiritual experience. I was 16, and I decided I really wanted to have that same experience again. So I actually went off into the forest one morning at about maybe 10 o'clock. I rode my bike out there. I parked it. I walked into the forest and I was all by myself on the side of a hill in a valley. and I was sitting in the forest. And so I sat there and I was really expecting to have that experience. I was really trying to force it. And so I sat there for hours, and I would get up and move from one position to another position and sit somewhere else, and just really willing that experience to come again. And then I got up and I was doing some Tai Chi, and I was doing different things to try and create the right space. And I basically spent all afternoon sitting in the forest expecting that experience to return. And it didn't come at all. And I was so disappointed in some way. And so at some point, the sun was starting to go down, and I felt really defeated. And so I walked out of the forest, and I was standing on the side of the hill in this valley. And I still remember the place because I go running there sometimes. And I'm looking down the valley, and the sun was coming down and the sun was setting. And then this eagle flew into view and started swooping back and forward across the valley. And I'd given up on having a spiritual experience. I'd completely given up on it. And so I was just standing there watching and experiencing. And I really became attentive to that moment. I really became so present. And suddenly that sense of expansion and connection, the opening of the heart, and the feeling of my consciousness enlarging and expanding, it just spontaneously happened. And I'm standing there and I'm watching this amazing scene of this bird swooping around in this beautiful evening light. And I was just in bliss again. And I could only have the experience when I gave up the idea of needing to have the experience. I had to let go of trying to have the experience. And then the experience came. And so I remember I got on my bike and I biked home, and I had dinner with my parents and my brothers. And I was sitting there and I was just bathed in unconditional love. And I was just feeling so much love for my mother and my father and my two brothers. And in that moment, I thought I was realized. I thought my life was never going to be the same again. And I went to bed like that, and I was just in this state of absolute delight. And I woke up again in the morning, and it was completely gone. I was back to I was like, no,
Told you.
no.
Yeah.
And
We've all
for
been
me,
there. We've all been there.
it was such a great glimpse of some future state that I'm still aiming to live from that place of unconditional love on a daily basis. But it was such a great lesson that trying to force it was the wrong approach. I had to let go and surrender in some way and allow it to happen.
I'm reminded of a story from the Zen tradition that speaks about a monk who was practicing very austerely in the monastery for many, many years. And he would, his goal was what they call in Japanese satori, which is an experience of enlightenment, let's say. And he was practicing and practicing, and nothing was happening. Like, he didn't have any experiences. And after 16 years of this, it was such a rigorous discipline. He just gave up. He said, it's probably not for me. I tried, but I haven't gotten a glimpse of satori. And so he left the monastery, and he went, I think he went to his mother's house or something. And the next day he was sweeping the garden there, and there was these little pebbles. And then one of the pebbles kind of broke loose when he was raking the garden, and it flew against a wooden pole in the garden, and it made this sound like "puk." And the moment it made that sound, he had his experience of satori. It's just like, he's like, everything happened for him in that moment. And it's one of the stories they tell to explain that it comes at the right time when you're ready for it and not when you expect it. So, these 16 years of practice were definitely necessary for him to come to that point. It's not like he could just have forgotten about that and he would have had the experience anyway. No. These years of practice were, preparation, but it wasn't coming when he thought it was coming. It was coming the moment that he really gave up all his attachments to that experience, and then it was able to come.
And that's because satori means instant realization. It's like in a moment it happens. And it reminds me as well of that story of one of perhaps the most famous Zen poem of all time by Basho. And it says, "The pond is old, the frog jumped in, plop."
That must be when he achieved his satori, the plop of the frog entering
the Chinese have a word, and the word means the sound of water. So the sound that the water makes when you drop a stone in, or when a frog jumps in. But yes,
Gosh.
this is the nature of the satori.
By the way, it's like you're really sitting in Plato's cave there, because you don't see it, but behind you, I'm seeing these shadows on the wall that are moving in and out all the time. It's like people moving by the window where you're sitting.
Yes, exactly.
And it creates these wonderful shadow effects, and it's like it's Plato's cave where you have the shadows that are moving behind you, which is the world
Yes, which
and
is the true world.
the true world.
So what I want to do as well. So we've got this picture of spirituality. So it's a different type of experience, and so it's not like when you go to the supermarket and buy groceries. It's not that type of experience. It's not the type of experience when you go visit your grandmother and you talk about what she's been doing during the week. And
Not even when you go to the amusement park and you go on the ride and you're
it's
having such
also
fun.
not that type of experience. So that's the cool thing for people to realize is there's a whole different type of experience that perhaps they are not partaking in. And the thing is, people hate to miss out on things. So if you found out that there was people here living on Earth at the same time as you, but they were having a completely different type of experience here, that is something that you don't want to miss out on.
It's the spiritual FOMO.
Yeah, so this is the thing, like it's not going to Bali and taking a photo at this particular sunset spot at a particular time. That's the same type of experience you can have, going to the beach at in the Hay and taking a photo there. It's the same type of experience. It's in a different place, but it's the same type of experience. But if you really want to have a different, a whole different type of experience, like a whole different way of experiencing reality, what you need to do is find yourself a spiritual path or a spiritual tradition and then do the practice. And then it opens to you these types of experience that you would not have otherwise. And to me, they are so deeply interesting. And that's why when people read stories of the great yogis in the Himalayas or the great masters, you get a sense these people are having different types of experience that I'm having. And
Yeah.
I want to have some of those. They sound
Yeah.
really interesting. So, but then the question is, okay, but how does a spiritual experience or a spiritual approach or a spiritual practice, how does it actually happen how do we make that happen in a day-to-day experience in our life? Because we know the practice. So we can sit down and we can chant our mantra for half an hour. We can sit there and meditate on the candle flame. Or we can meditate on our heart for half an hour. But how do we actually make that a reality in our day-to-day lives? And so this is when the Zen tradition comes in handy again. So I have a great story about a Zen monastery in Japan. And the Zen master one day was returning to the monastery, and he saw 5 of the monks returning from the market on their bicycles. And so as they arrived back at the monastery, they parked their bicycles and they dismounted. And he came up to them and he said to them, the Zen master said to them, "Why are you riding your bicycles?" And the first one looks at him and says, so I am riding my bicycle so that I can put the sack of potatoes upon the bicycle so I do not have to carry them on my shoulders. And so I'm doing that so that when I am old, I am not bent over and hunched. And the master said to him, you're a smart boy. When you grow old, you will not be bent and hunched like I am. So he says to he looks at the second monk and he says to him, "Why are you riding your bicycle?" And he says, "I love to watch the trees and fields pass by as I roll down the path." And the master says to him, your eyes are open and you are seeing the world. He moves on to the third student. He says, "Why are you riding your bicycle?" He says, "When I ride my bicycle, I'm able to chant the sutras." And the master says, your mind will roll with the ease of a newly trued wheel. So the fourth student, he moves on to him and says, "Why are you riding your bicycle?" He says, "When riding my bicycle, I live in harmony with all sentient beings." The master says, "You are riding on the golden path of non-harming." He moves on to the fifth student and says, "Why are you riding your bicycle?"
This is the kicker, I'm sure.
The student says, "I ride my bicycle to ride my bicycle." The master looks at him and says, I must become your student now.
This is like the Zen koan we said the other time, where what is Zen? When I eat, I eat. When I sleep, I sleep. When I walk, I walk. This is Zen.
All right, so let's just put a break there. I just need to plug my computer in because otherwise I'm going to run out of power.
You do that.
So what that story is saying to me is something about how we need to approach the actions and the activities of our life coming from a spiritual place. And so what I mean by that is so often in our lives, we are doing something in return for hoping to achieve some future outcome at some point, in some place, in some time. And so when we're doing that, everything becomes conditional. So why am I walking? Oh, I'm walking to get to the train so then I can be on the train. And why am I on the train? I'm on the train so I can get to work. And so why am I on the train going to work? So I can earn some money. And so why am I earning some money? So then I can afford to go on vacation, or I can afford to pay my rent each week. So we're never doing what we're doing. We're always doing it for some other reason. And we had a really nice experience here in Berlin last weekend, the weekend before. We had a picnic for spiritual seekers. So we had a meditation week here in Berlin back in May, and then we just recently had this lovely a spiritual picnic, we can call it, where we went to a lovely lake, we chanted, we meditated, and then I invited everyone to partake in a walking meditation. And most people had never done a walking meditation before. But what I explained to them is walking meditation, just as when you're doing your seated practice, we're going to start by focusing on something. So when you're starting with your practice, you might start by focusing on you chanting a mantra, or focusing on your breath, or focusing on a candle, or focusing on a picture of your spiritual master. And so just in the same way, when we're walking, we're trying to bring our awareness down from our mind. We're trying to bring our awareness into our body. And then we can focus on the sound our feet are making on the gravel paths. We can focus on the feeling of our heart beating. We can focus on the feeling of the wind blowing on our face. And so we maybe did a 20-minute walk. We walked from where we're having our picnic off into the fields, and there was a beautiful field with all these poppy flowers. And then we stood under a tree in silence, and then we turned around and walked back. And then when I talked to everyone afterwards, I got everyone to share something they noticed or experienced that they would not normally notice or experience. And people really had all these wonderful things they noticed. They noticed the wind blowing across the field. So they saw the grass moving with the breath of the wind blowing. They felt the feeling of the sun on their skin. They felt the feeling of their feet on the ground. And people had all these wonderful experiences and felt so peaceful and enjoyed the walk so profoundly. And the thing is, we're always walking somewhere, but we're never walking. It's like, why are you walking? I'm walking to be somewhere else, to not be where I am right now. And so we're never present to the experience we're having of walking. And when you actually bring your awareness into that moment of walking, you actually find that the walking is amazing. It's like, why did I think I needed to be somewhere else? Like, why can I not be here walking? Because when I'm here walking, I'm noticing, I'm attending to reality around me. And when we start to really, truly attend to the present moment, to the reality that is occurring right now, you start to attend to the divinity which is underneath it, which is behind the scenes, which is always there. But because we're in such a rush to be somewhere else, to be doing something else, and what it reminds me of, I think one of the best analogies so we could say, why am I walking? I'm walking to go for a walk. Or this morning I went out for a run, and on some level I could think, well, I'm going for a run because I want to get fitter and I want to make my body stronger, and I've got a race coming up. So there's all these conditional reasons for going for a run. But when I was out
They're
there,
all valid, right? They're all valid.
they're all valid. But if I want to have the best possible or the highest possible experience of going for a run, I simply need to be going for a run to go for a run. I need to have all of my awareness in the experience of going for a run. And music is a wonderful example. So when we play a piece of music, what is the goal of playing the piece of music? What is the goal of playing music? Or what is the goal of dancing when music is being played?
Isn't getting to the end of the score, so you finish?
So this is a thing, because some people will see the goal of music is to play all of the notes correctly at the right timing, at the right speed, at the right moment, so they can get to the end of the performance or piece without making a mistake.
Yeah.
And then every time you play music, it becomes an examination. And I see a lot of musicians, because I deal with a lot of musicians through my store, and a lot of musicians have fallen out of love with music, because that was what music became in the Western tradition. It was always an examination. Every time you were playing, you were being examined as to whether you could play all of the notes correctly at the right time, at the right moment, for the right length, and then get to the end of the piece. But if that was really the goal, then would not the best musician be the person who played the piece fastest? He got to the end first. So then is he the winner? And it's like dancing. What is the purpose of dancing? Is it to end up at some particular point on the dance floor? Or is it to be completely present in the playing of the music, the experience of the music? And when we play music simply to play music, there's a joyfulness and there's a consciousness that we're bringing to it, because we're embracing the moment. We're embracing this particular note and then this particular note. So we're bringing all of our awareness into each of those moments as they occur. And that's really when profound experiences begin to happen, I think.
Yeah, I think they really nailed that down in Ireland. So we both have a really good mutual friend in Ireland, Sutherland, and I was traveling with him maybe 2 years ago, and he took me to this beautiful little village on the West Coast. And we had a trad session there, which is when all the local musicians, they're just people from the town, they just gather at somebody's house. And the whole evening, they just play music together. It's not a performance. There's no audience. Well, maybe there's some friends that are listening in, but it's all about the experience of making music together. And it's one of the most enjoyable music events that I've been to, because I had a guitar there. I was just like strumming along, but there's no, like you say, no examination. There's nothing nobody's grading you for it. It's just the pure joy of making music together. And that tradition is so alive in Ireland. Like they do that in every little village. They have these trad sessions, traditional Irish music, trad. And it's in a pub or at somebody's house, and everybody makes music there. It's like you grow up playing music for the pure joy of making music. So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful tradition, and reminds me of what you were talking about.
And the thing is, you don't want to end up finding that you have rushed through your life thinking that there was someone somewhere to arrive at. So many people are living as though there is some goal to achieve. There's some place to arrive at the end. So they're working really hard at their job, and so they're walking to the train so they can catch the train, so they can get to work, so they can work really hard, so they can earn more money, so they can get a bigger bonus.
Are you talking about my life, Vajin? I can really. This is a really good lesson for me, I have to say.
So
I'm
so
really like that sometimes. I'm so rushing in my. I'm always getting somewhere.
There's always somewhere to be, because so many people, I think, find themselves at some point in their life where they look back and they feel like, wow, I really rushed to get here. But like, did I miss something along the way? Was there some experience? Was there some deeply meaningful moments that I could have experienced that were happening the whole time, but I was too busy trying to be somewhere
So
else?
I sometimes catch myself at work when I'm rushing, like you say. It happens when it's busy and you want to just like, you want to serve the coffee, you want to make the waffle, you want to do everything perfect. And sometimes, or I'm doing the dishes or something, and I'm all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm rushing. I'm like, I feel this kind of rushing energy. And I'm like, okay, no, let's just be completely in the moment and just enjoy the activity. And then this kind of restlessness leaves me. And immediately you're much happier. You're much more content. You're much more satisfied. Everything gets this flavor of satisfaction and harmony. You're in much more harmony with your surroundings. So it's a really powerful lesson. And actually, yesterday, let me tell a short example. Another example. Yesterday, I did a triathlon, an Olympic distance triathlon, and I went to Rotterdam for it, and everything was wonderful. I really enjoyed it, and I was swimming, then biking, and then on the run, I was really focusing. In the, when you come to the run, you're really tired. You've just you swam for 30 minutes, you biked for an hour, and then you're running, and it's like your legs are tired. It was hot, and something in me was saying, "Oh, if I only get to the finish line, I'd be so happy." Then I've completed the distance, and I was really catching myself and saying, "No, no, no, no. This is the moment. This moment where I'm running now and feeling the fatigue, but still try to enjoy the run." And it became for me much more enjoyable when I had that mindset of just being in the moment. I was visualizing the divine in front of me, like giving me light and encouragement. I was seeing the clouds. It was a beautiful sunny day. I was looking at the trees and the water around me and the other runners. And yeah, it became so much more enjoyable that way.
Yeah. So in that moment, why you were doing a triathlon was to do a triathlon.
Exactly.
You were
That's
simply
exactly
being
right.
there doing a triathlon. You
Yes.
and that's the funny thing, that when you're doing something hard and challenging, we very often make it worse and more painful by wishing we were somewhere else. Because if you wish you were at the finish line and you've still got half an hour of running to go, that really creates this friction. You create this friction between what you're experiencing
That's
and
exactly right.
what you want to be experiencing.
Friction is the right word. Also, when you're working to do the dishes and you just want the dishes to be cleaned up and back in their place, it just creates friction. That's exactly right.
And so there is something really powerful for a spiritual person to practice simply doing what they're doing, be completely present, attending to the present moment, attending to the present. And it's so powerful because, like you notice, as soon as you're attending to the present moment, suddenly the colors pop out. Suddenly the trees are not just trees that you're running past. You're actually seeing each individual tree. Instead of it being a sunny day, you're actually seeing this particular unique sunny day. And that's often what we miss out on when we are not attending to the moment. The world just becomes, our mind creates like a caricature of the world. It's like tree, car, bus, person, house, dog, cat.
Maybe we're seeing the world through our memories, basically,
Yeah,
because we've
we're
seen it
not
so many times
really
before.
there anymore. We're not
No.
seeing what is happening in front of us. And as soon as we really start attending to the present moment, suddenly everything comes back into like three-dimensional, full technicolor sound and color. And we look around and we're like, my God, how did I not notice? It's such a beautiful day today. And
Yeah.
look at this, look where I am and look what I'm doing. All of those things come back to life again. And it's all just by bringing our attention. It's like being mindful again, bringing our, because mindfulness, the most simple definition of mindfulness is paying attention to what you're doing, or what you're paying attention to. So actually having your awareness in the place you are doing what you're doing. And as soon as you do that again, it suddenly breaks out into this amazing reality again. It suddenly
Yeah.
becomes complex and interesting.
There's magic in the present moment, and that magic only unlocks when you are there and when you're not rushing to get somewhere else.
And so when we look at our effect on the world around us, what do you think is going to be the most powerful space for you to operate from in the world if you're trying to create a more harmonious, a more joyful, a more beautiful world around you? Is it with you simply going from place to place, always trying to be somewhere else? Or is it you completely present, attending to the present moment and seeing the divine, seeing the good in all of the people around you because you're completely there? And for me, that is such a powerful place. That is the place where you really have access to all of your divine qualities. That's the place when you really truly become a master player of the game of life. Like that's when you're really dancing the divine Leela, but you're doing it in such an elegant and beautiful way because you're fully there. You're fully inside that moment.
And it's not that you cannot achieve anything by doing that, because if I look at our own teacher, Sri Chinmoy, he achieved so many things. He was always painting or creating something at the same time. I think he was the best example of someone who was completely present in the moment, right? He sometimes said that he could do many things at the same time inwardly. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of being a God realized soul, is that you get access to inner worlds and you can operate on different worlds at the same time, but still being completely in the present moment. Like he did not have any thought about what happened yesterday or he's going to do in the future, but he was completely aligned with the divine in every moment, fully present. But that also unlocks this tremendous creativity, this tremendous energy to do things and create things and live your fullest life, like your richest potential.
Yeah, and it stops us wasting time because I think a moment spent fully attending to the present is never a wasted moment. The wasted moments that we have is where we are taking ourselves away from reality. We're scrolling on our phone, or we're just idly flipping through a magazine or looking at the newspaper, or doing something without bringing our full attention to what we're actually doing. And that's, I think, when you really feel like, you feel it inside yourself, I just wasted so much time. I was doing something, but I was not really present. I was just simply entertaining myself mindlessly for some period of time. And that's when we really feel, I really wasted that moment. But I think when you're really there, you never feel like, even if you're doing very simple things, like you're just there doing the dishes, it's very meaningful and satisfying when you're there doing the dishes. And yeah, I can imagine you sometimes at the end of the day, trying to clean up. So for you, it becomes this race to finish, so you can
Yes.
then be off doing something else, doing the next thing.
Yes.
But
Yes.
you have to go through that experience. That experience is going to happen whether you like it or not. There's some things that we just simply have to do, but we have a choice. We can be there fully engaged and fully attentive to the moment. And perhaps you'll see you'll see the pattern in the wood flooring, or you'll see the pattern in the bubbles in the sink in front of you when you're doing the
Mm,
dishes. There's all
yes.
these moments of incredible beauty that we won't see if we're too busy rushing to be somewhere else.
And what about if you listen to like a podcast or some music while you're doing the dishes or while you're cleaning up? That also kind of distracts you in a way, right?
Yeah, I mean, that can be useful, but you need to understand what you're trying to do there. Like, you need to be intentional in that. If you're doing it just mindlessly and you're listening to something and you're not really paying attention to either what you're listening to or what you're doing, you're kind of split your brain, and half of you
Yeah.
is doing one thing and half of you is doing the other thing.
Yeah.
That never really it helps pass the time, I think. Like, it definitely
Yeah.
helps pass the time, but I don't think it brings your full potential into being. And
Yeah.
so whether that's fully being present to a conversation, or it's like when you're there having a conversation with someone, but you're also completely distracted by some thoughts about what you have to do tomorrow, or you're trying to do something in front of you, and you're not really giving your full attention to the other person. That never really, I think, feels good. Like, inside our own being, it doesn't feel like like sometimes
Oh,
we
you,
snap out of it and think, oh, hey, I'm really sorry, I wasn't really paying attention. And my
yeah.
dear brother Shamali is the master of that, because I'll often be saying some things to him, but he's actually, because he's someone who is very dynamic and loves some chaos in his life and is always doing many things. I'll realize I've said something and then I'm waiting for a response and there's no response coming. But I'll simply wait. And then maybe 1 or 2 minutes later, he'll say, oh, hey, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. Can you please repeat that again? So he doesn't, we can have a conversation in a way that sometimes I have to take my time and wait. But it's a beautiful thing because he's completely honest. He says, oh, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Or, like, can you please
Yeah.
repeat what you said? And that's really good to have that level of honesty with yourself, that, oh, I realized I wasn't paying proper attention, like, I need to
Yeah.
go back, like, please say that again. Because a lot of people will just carry on as though nothing happened there. So
Yes.
I appreciate his honesty in those moments.
Right. Exactly. Wow. So, coming back full circle about meditation and the world, we an opportunity to kind of create this beautiful vibration is happening on the 21st of September, when we do 7 minutes of meditation for world peace. And 21st of September is actually the UN International Day of Peace. And so, with our meditation center, but we also want to involve many people all around the world, we want to create these 7 minutes of meditation for world peace. And so, it's really a beautiful moment where we can all align together and at the same time send out this powerful vibration for peace to the whole world. It starts at 9 a.m. New York time until 9:07 New York time. So, wherever you are in the world, it's really powerful if you can do it on the same time, but if not, later in the day is fine too. And it's a wonderful opportunity to kind of create this ripple for peace. And I think these joint meditations are a very powerful way to, yeah, bring more peace into the world. And I just wanted uh, to cite a few beautiful efforts that Sri Chinmoy wrote about the power of meditation in the world. One of the most powerful ones I found was the following one: the cyclone violences in various parts of the world can be stopped by soulful prayers and powerful meditations. The cyclone violences in various parts of the world can be stopped by soulful prayers and powerful meditations. There's another one: ceaseless prayers and meditations are of supreme need if we want to save this sinking world. And the last one: the power of meditation will definitely transform the Earth planet at God's choice hour. So,
Beautiful, beautiful.
some powerful thoughts to end today's discussion.
And that's something beautiful to take away, that we all have the power and the agency to affect the world around us, and it's through the consciousness that we offer to the world around us. And that's really our
Exactly.
most powerful gift, that we have to offer.
Yes.
So be wise and be mindful in your interactions with the world, and you'll start to see that the world around you will begin to change.
Yeah, don't think that you're a helpless drop, that you cannot do anything, that you have no influence. Feel that you are a divine spark. You are part of the divine universal consciousness, and you can bring your own inner light to the fore and inspire the world and bring positive energy and peace into the world. It's we're not being naive here. We're being very, very spiritually practical, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and as we see from the studies you cited, that has a profound effect in the world.
We have some evidence behind it. Exactly. So that's a wonderful note to end on. Did you have anything else to add, or?
No, that's wonderful. Thank you for the wonderful conversation, Abhinabha, and I look forward to the next one.
So do I. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. If you enjoy our podcast, please consider subscribing. Leave a comment. We're always really happy to hear your comments, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you.